On October 12, 2015, the tranquil town of Willow Creek was shattered when 19-year-old Emily Carter, a bright college student with a passion for nature, embarked on a solo hike through the dense, mist-shrouded forests surrounding the area, a trail she'd walked countless times. By nightfall, she failed to return home, sparking a desperate search that would expose haunting questions. The act opens by juxtaposing Emily's vibrant life. Home videos of her laughing with friends, volunteering at an animal shelter, with the chilling emptiness of the woods where she vanished. Her mother's tearful recollection of their final text exchange, "I'll be home by sunset," underscores the abrupt rupture between normalcy and tragedy. Investigators soon discover her abandoned backpack near a creek, its contents eerily intact. A half-empty water bottle, a map, and a journal with a cryptic entry dated days earlier. "I think someone's been following me." The narrative tightens around the baffling lack of evidence. No signs of struggle, no clear footprints, and a puzzling disconnect between her planned route and where her belongings were found. As the search expanded, rumors swirled. Was this a case of a hiker lost in the wilderness, or something far darker? Act 1 masterfully layers Emily's relatable humanity with mounting dread, leaving viewers questioning whether her disappearance was a tragic accident or the result of a predator lurking in plain sight. By the act's end, the stage is set for a deeper dive into the suspects, secrets, and the community's fractured trust, hooking the audience with the central mystery. Who took Emily Carter and why? The search for Emily Carter began with the assumption that she had simply gotten lost in Willow Creek's labyrinthine forests. But as investigators peeled back the layers of her life, they uncovered a troubling paradox. The girl everyone thought they knew harbored secrets that blurred the line between victim and target. Emily's childhood friends described her as the girl who could light up a room. Born and raised in Willow Creek, she was a fixture in the small community, a star student, a volunteer at the local animal shelter, and the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthdays. Home videos showed her at 16, laughing as she bottle-fed a rescued fawn, her auburn hair catching the sunlight. She had this light, her best friend Jessica recalled in a tearful interview. Even on the rainiest days, Emily made you feel like summer wasn't over. But beneath that radiant exterior, Emily's private writings hinted at a growing unease. 2 days after her disappearance, police discovered a leather-bound journal in her dorm room. Its pages revealed a stark contrast to her cheerful persona. In entry dated 3 weeks before she vanished, Emily wrote, October 1st, 2015. I'm not imagining things. The red truck is back. It's been parked across from my dorm for hours. When I went to confront him, he drove off, but I memorized the license plate. RCJ 482. Why does this keep happening? The journal entries grew increasingly frantic. She documented strange occurrences. Phone calls with heavy breathing, a shadowy figure lingering outside her night classes, and a cryptic note slipped under her door reading, "You're not safe here." Emily confided in her roommate, Claire, who initially dismissed her fears as stress-induced paranoia. She'd been pulling all-nighters for midterms, Claire admitted to detectives. I told her it was just some creep trying to scare her. I never thought. But Emily's anxiety wasn't baseless. A review of campus security footage confirmed her claims. A red Ford F-150 with tinted windows appeared repeatedly outside her dorm during late hours. The truck's plates, however, were fake, registered to a non-existent address in a neighboring state. This discovery shifted the investigation. What had seemed like a tragic hiking accident now bore the hallmarks of a targeted attack. The boyfriend, a complicated alibi. Emily's on-again, off-again boyfriend, Mark Thompson, became an immediate person of interest. The two had dated for 2 years, but broke up 3 months before her disappearance after a heated argument overheard by neighbors. They were screaming about trust issues, one neighbor reported. Emily kept yelling, "I know what you did." Mark, a 22-year-old mechanic, claimed he was at work the day Emily vanished. His boss corroborated his alibi, stating Mark had repaired a Toyota Camry from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. But detectives found inconsistencies. Security footage from the garage showed Mark leaving for a 90-minute lunch break, a window that aligned with Emily's hike timeline. When questioned, Mark grew defensive. Yeah, I grab a burger. So what? I didn't even know she was hiking that day. But Emily's journal told a different story. In a searing entry, she accused Mark of gaslighting her. October 5th, Mark keeps saying I'm crazy for thinking someone's following me. But last night, he slipped up. He said, "You'll regret pushing me away." Was that a threat? Why won't anyone believe me? Despite mounting suspicion, physical evidence tying Mark to the scene was non-existent. No fingerprints, no DNA, and no witnesses placed him near Willow Creek that day. The professor, an unlikely mentor. Another figure emerged in Emily's final weeks, Dr. Richard Hayes, her anthropology professor. Described by students as charming but intense, Hayes had taken a keen interest in Emily's research on Appalachian folklore. They'd spent hours discussing her thesis, a study of local legends about shadow people said to haunt the woods. Security logs showed Emily visited Hayes' office 4 times in the month before her disappearance, often staying past midnight. They were just work sessions, Hayes insisted. Emily was fascinated by the idea that folklore could mask real crimes. She theorized that some myths were actually cover-ups for murders or kidnappings. But a cryptic comment in her journal raised eyebrows. October 8th. Dr. Hayes warned me to stop digging. He said some stories are better left buried. Was he threatening me or protecting me? Hayes denied any wrongdoing, and without concrete evidence, he remained a footnote in the case, until a student came forward with a damning allegation. The whistleblower, a student's revelation. 2 weeks into the investigation, a sophomore named Liam Carter, no relation to Emily, contacted police. He claimed to have seen Hayes arguing with Emily in a campus parking lot days before her disappearance. He grabbed her arm and said, "You're playing with fire," Liam recounted. Emily looked terrified. She ran off, and Hayes just stood there, staring at her like he wanted to hurt her. Hayes dismissed the claim as a misunderstanding. Emily was distressed about her thesis deadline. I urged her to focus less on conspiracies and more on facts. The discovery of Emily Carter's journal shifted the case from a missing persons report to a potential homicide, but with no body, no crime scene, and no clear evidence of foul play, detectives found themselves chasing shadows. The third act of the story plunges into the murky world of suspects, some obvious, others lurking in the periphery, each with secrets to hide and alibis that crumble under scrutiny. Mark Thompson, Emily's ex-boyfriend, sat stiffly in the interrogation room, his fingers drumming a nervous rhythm on the steel table. He'd been brought in for questioning 3 times, each session more confrontational than the last. "I loved her," he insisted, his voice cracking. "Yeah, we fought. Yeah, I said stupid things. But I didn't hurt her." Detectives pressed him about the 90-minute gap in his alibi, the window when Emily vanished. Security footage from Benny's Diner, where Mark claimed he'd eaten lunch, showed his pickup truck pulling into the parking lot at 12:07 p.m. But the timestamp on the receipt he provided read 12:35 p.m. "Where were you for those 28 minutes, Mark?" Detective Ruiz demanded. Mark's face paled. "I drove around. Needed to clear my head." When asked to trace his route, he hesitated. "I don't remember. Maybe took the back roads near the river." Those back roads led straight to Willow Creek. Meanwhile, Emily's journal entries about the red truck gnawed at investigators. The vehicle's phantom-like appearances, always at night, always idling just beyond the reach of streetlights, suggested a stalker's calculated obsession. Detectives tracked down every red Ford F-150 registered within 200 miles, but none matched the partial VIN number etched into the fake license plates. Then, a break. A mechanic in a neighboring town recalled servicing a red truck with a snake and cross tattoo on the driver's wrist weeks before Emily's disappearance. "Guy paid in cash," he said, "had out-of-state plates. RC something." The description matched the gas station clerk's account, but without a name or face. The lead dissolved into speculation. Was the driver a transient predator, or someone closer to home? The spotlight then turned to Dr. Richard Hayes, Emily's enigmatic anthropology professor. Colleagues described him as brilliant but volatile, a man who thrived on intellectual conquests. Students whispered about his habit of blurring professional boundaries, late-night meetings, intense eye contact, favors disguised as mentorship. Emily's thesis notes revealed her growing fixation on his theories. Dr. Hayes says every legend has a kernel of truth. What if the shadow people are real? What if they're hiding something? But when Hayes was questioned about their final interaction, his demeanor shifted. Emily was paranoid, he said flatly. She became obsessed with proving that local disappearances were linked to some cult. I advised her to stick to academic rigor, not fantasy. Yet Liam Carter, the sophomore who'd witnessed their confrontation, held firm. Hayes threatened her. I saw it. Without proof, Hayes remained a suspect in limbo. A man with the intellect to plan a perfect crime, but no motive beyond ego. As the investigation deepened, a fourth figure emerged. Greg Turner, the overzealous volunteer searcher. His obsession with Emily bordered on pathological. Neighbors reported seeing him linger near the Carter home, snapping photos of the Bring Emily Home posters. When detectives searched his cluttered basement, they found binders filled with news clippings about unsolved crimes, maps of Willow Creek annotated with cryptic symbols, and a locked cabinet containing hiking gear stained with mud and blood. Turner laughed off the discovery. I cut my hand during the search. Check the reports. I reported it. The blood matched his DNA, but forensic analysts identified another set of traces on the gear, a rare synthetic fiber used in high-end outdoor jackets. Emily owned such a jacket, a gift from her parents, but it had vanished with her. Turner's alibi for the day of the disappearance. I was at work, he said, smirking. His employer, a printing press, confirmed he'd clocked in at 8 a.m. But security footage showed him leaving at 11:45 a.m. for a lunch break that lasted 2 hours. His explanation: I took a nap in my car. Amid the chaos, the Carter family fractured under the weight of suspicion. Emily's father, David, became a reluctant suspect after a neighbor reported hearing him shout, "You'll ruin us all," during a phone call days before her disappearance. When confronted, David slumped in his chair, eyes bloodshot. Emily found out about the money, he muttered. I'd been borrowing from her college fund. She threatened to tell her mom. Diane Carter's face crumpled as the truth surfaced. You what? She screamed. Our daughter's gone, and you're worried about money. David's desperation painted him as a man capable of violence, but without evidence. Detectives turned their attention to a more chilling possibility. Had Emily's pursuit of the oak tree secret led her to someone even her father feared? The journal's cryptic final entry, "I'm going back to the oak tree," consumed the public's imagination. Online sleuths scoured satellite images of Willow Creek, flagging every oak grove within a 10-mile radius. One theory, posted to a true crime forum, gained traction. The oak tree isn't a tree. It's a codename for a meet-up spot used by drug runners. Emily stumbled onto their operation. Detectives quietly explored the angle, discovering a string of unsolved thefts and overdoses linked to the area. A recovered addict named Mara corroborated the theory. I heard guys at the methadone clinic talk about a drop point near Willow Creek. They called it the Old Oak. But a search of the rumor location, a derelict barn miles from Emily's trail, yielded nothing. The case's most baffling twist came when a hiker stumbled upon a shallow grave 30 miles north of Willow Creek. Inside was a skeletonized body, its jawbone shattered by blunt force trauma. For days, the Carters held their breath, until dental records confirmed it wasn't Emily. The victim was identified as Lucas Green, a 24-year-old mechanic who'd vanished in 2012. The connection: Green had worked at the same garage as Mark Thompson. Lucas quit a month before he disappeared, Mark told detectives, sweating. I barely knew him. But former co-worker recalled a heated argument between the two men over a missing toolbox. Mark accused Lucas of stealing his tools, threatened to bury him if he didn't fess up. Was Green's murder a red herring, or a thread in a larger tapestry of violence? As autumn leaves gave way to winter frost, the case grew colder. Detectives re-interviewed witnesses, re-examined evidence, and even consulted a forensic linguist to analyze Emily's journal. The expert pinpointed a disturbing pattern. Her writing shifts from fear to resolve. In the final entries, there's almost acceptance, like she knew what was coming. Meanwhile, the red truck resurfaced in a dashcam video from a highway rest stop, time-stamped 2 days after Emily's disappearance. The driver, face obscured by a hood, bought a coffee and a map of Canada. He asked about border crossings, the cashier recalled. Acted jumpy. The final days of Act 3 hinged on a single, overlooked detail, a torn receipt found in Emily's backpack. Initially dismissed as litter, a forensic accountant noticed tiny numbers scribbled in the margins, a sequence that matched the format of a locker combination at the Willow Creek bus station. Inside locker number 217, detectives found a manila envelope containing photos of Emily taken weeks before her disappearance. Entering her dorm, jogging in the park, laughing with friends. On the back of one photo, scrawled in block letters, was a message: "You should have listened." The locker had been rented under a fake name, paid for in cash. Fingerprints on the envelope matched no one in the database. By the act's end, the suspects stood like ghosts in a hall of mirrors, each reflecting fragments of guilt, none offering closure. Mark Thompson moved out of state, claiming harassment. Dr. Hayes took a sudden sabbatical, citing stress. Greg Turner was arrested on unrelated stalking charges, but released on bail. And the red truck, it vanished, as if swallowed by the same forests that took Emily Carter. The only certainty was her journal's haunting refrain, echoing through the hollows of Willow Creek. "I hope I'm wrong." The discovery of the locker photos ignited a frenzy in the investigation. For the first time, there was irrefutable proof that Emily Carter had been watched, hunted, chosen. The grainy images of her entering her dorm, captured from a distance with a telephoto lens, were time-stamped weeks before her disappearance. But it was the photo of her jogging in the park that chilled detectives to the core. Her head was circled in red ink, and the words, "You should have listened," glared from the back like a taunt. The envelope reeked of cigarette smoke and cheap cologne, a sensory clue that led nowhere. Fingerprints lifted from the locker were processed through every database, military, criminal, even overseas, but yielded no matches. "This guy's a ghost," Detective Ruiz muttered, staring at the evidence board. "Or he's been trained to stay off the grid." The synthetic fiber found on Greg Turner's hiking gear became the next focal point. Lab tests identified it as a proprietary blend used exclusively in a high-end outdoor brand's 2014 limited edition jackets, the same brand Emily's parents had gifted her for her 18th birthday. Her jacket was teal with silver accents, Diane Carter recalled, her voice trembling as she flipped through catalog photos. She loved it, wore it everywhere. Detectives combed through retail records, tracing sales of the jacket within a 500-mile radius. Only 23 were sold in the region, 22 accounted for, one missing. The buyer of the missing jacket? A cash transaction at an REI in Knoxville, Tennessee, under the name John Smith. Security footage from the store had long been erased. As winter tightened its grip on Willow Creek, a storm of media scrutiny descended. True crime podcasts dissected the case, armchair detectives flooded tip lines with wild theories, and Emily's face became a symbol of every missing girl America had failed. Then, a call from an anonymous source appended everything. "Check the quarry," a distorted voice whispered to a rookie cop manning the tip line. South Ridge, buried under the rocks. The quarry, a jagged scar on the edge of Willow Creek, had been searched twice before. But this time, K-9 units alerted to a fissure near the South Ridge. Digging through frost-hardened earth, investigators uncovered a decaying canvas backpack, not Emily's, but one belonging to Lucas Green, the mechanic whose skeleton had been found months earlier. Inside was a waterlogged notebook filled with coordinates, sketches of Willow Creek's trails, and a single name, Emily C. The connection between Green and Emily, previously tenuous, now solidified into something sinister. Green's sister, tracked down in Oregon, revealed he'd been obsessed with true crime. He'd binge-watch documentaries and say, "I could disappear someone and never get caught, she said. We thought he was joking. Had Green stalked Emily as some twisted experiment? Or was his involvement darker still? Forensic linguists compared Green's notebook to Emily's journal. The writing styles diverged, Green's blocky print versus Emily's cursive loops, but both contained references to the oak tree. Green had circled the phrase, meet at the oak, in a margin, adding a question mark. Detectives theorized he might have lured Emily to the site under false pretenses, but without proof, the narrative stalled. Then, a break in the red truck mystery. A retired trucker in Kentucky, watching a news segment about Emily, recognized the snake and cross tattoo description. I saw that same ink on a guy at a rest stop near Knoxville, he told police. He was driving a red Ford, real beat-up, bought a map, and asked about backroads to Willow Creek. The encounter happened 3 days before Emily vanished. A sketch artist refined the tattoo based on the trucker's memory. A serpent coiled around a Latin cross, its tail hooked into a barbed wire heart. The tattoo's design matched a gang symbol from a disbanded prison group in Texas. Former members, interviewed in exchange for immunity, revealed the symbol represented faith in chaos, a mantra for those who believed in divine justice through violence. One ex-con recalled a member named Dex, paroled in 2014, who'd brag about making girls disappear like smoke. Dex's last known address? A trailer park 50 miles from Willow Creek. Detectives descended on the trailer, only to find it abandoned. Neighbors described Dex as a quiet loner who fixed cars and stared at the woods. In his shed, they found a stack of National Geographic magazines, pages torn out and replaced with handwritten notes. Trail cameras are the key. Watch, wait, strike. Buried under a pile of tires was a rusted toolbox containing a teal jacket sleeve, its fabric a perfect match to Emily's missing coat. The sleeve, speckled with dried blood, was sent for DNA analysis. While waiting, detectives re-examined the quarry backpack. Hidden in a seam was a flash drive containing encrypted files. A tech analyst cracked the code, revealing hundreds of photos, not just of Emily, but of 6 other young women, all reported missing in the past decade. Each file was labeled with coordinates and dates. One folder, titled Final Project, held a video. The video, time-stamped October 12, 2015, began with shaky footage of Emily standing at the edge of a clearing, her teal jacket vivid against the autumn leaves. She glanced over her shoulder, breath visible in the cold air. "Is this it?" she called out. "Where's the oak tree?" A male voice, distorted by a modulator, replied, "Keep walking. It's just ahead." The camera panned to a gnarled oak, its trunk split by a lightning scar. Emily approached, knelt, and began digging with a small trowel. "There's nothing here," she said, frustration rising. This was a waste of. The screen jerked violently, followed by a thud. Emily screamed. The video cut to static. For the first time, there was proof Emily had been attacked. But who was behind the camera? Dex? Lucas Green? Or someone else? The DNA results from the jacket sleeve came back with a match. Greg Turner. Confronted in his jail cell, Turner sneered. "So, I had her jacket. Big deal. I found it in the woods during the search. But the blood on the sleeve told a different story. It belonged to Lucas Green." Turner's alibi unraveled as cell tower data placed his phone near the quarry the day Green's backpack was buried. "You're a patsy," Detective Ruiz said, leaning across the interrogation table. "Someone planted that sleeve on you. Who was it?" Turner's smirk faded. "I want a lawyer." The video's metadata revealed it had been uploaded to the flash drive on October 13, 2015, from a computer at Willow Creek Public Library. Security footage from that day showed a hooded figure using a terminal at 4:32 a.m. The figure wore gloves and a mask, but their gait, a slight limp in the right leg, matched Dex's parole officer's description. A bolo alert for Dex went national, and within 48 hours, he was spotted at a truck stop in New Mexico. Dex's arrest was anticlimactic. He offered no resistance, no denial. "Yeah, I filmed her," he said casually during interrogation. "But I didn't kill her. That wasn't part of the deal." "What deal?" Dex leaned back, grinning. The guy paid me $5,000 to scare her. Said she'd been snooping into stuff she shouldn't. All I had to do was follow her, take some pics, make her paranoid. The video was just extra credit. Who hired you? Some rich dude. Never got his name. Met him in a parking lot. Cash. No questions. Dex's description of the man matched Dr. Richard Hayes. Mid-50s, salt and pepper hair, driving a black Lexus with university decals. Confronted at his lakeside cabin, Hayes initially laughed off the accusation. This is absurd. I'm an academic, not a mob boss. But when shown the video, his composure cracked. Emily was obsessed with exposing the university's ties to land scams in Willow Creek. She threatened to go public unless I helped her. I couldn't let her destroy my career. According to Hayes, the university had secretly purchased land in Willow Creek to expand its campus, displacing families and burying environmental violations. Emily had uncovered the truth through her thesis research. I hired Dex to intimidate her, yes. But I never wanted her dead. She must have panicked and run into the woods. The pieces aligned. Emily's journal entries about being followed, her thesis notes on corporate cover-ups, Hayes' desperation to silence her. But without a body or murder weapon, the case remained circumstantial. Then, a hiker's dog unearthed a bone fragment near the oak tree. DNA confirmed it was Emily's. The fragment, a piece of her left femur, showed signs of predation, animal teeth marks, not tool marks. She likely died of exposure, the medical examiner concluded. The woods consumed her, but Emily's parents refused to accept it. She was chased. Diane Carter insisted. That video proves it. Public opinion split. Had Hayes' hired thug driven Emily to her death, or was her demise a tragic accident? The act closes with Hayes' arrest for conspiracy and obstruction. Dex plea bargained for a reduced sentence. Greg Turner, cleared of murder but convicted of stalking, vanished after his release. And Emily's jacket, still missing one sleeve, was returned to her parents, a ragged symbol of a truth forever out of reach. In final scene, Detective Ruiz stands at the oak tree, now cordoned off with police tape. A wind stirs the dead leaves, and for a moment, the shadows seem to shift, a fleeting glimpse of a girl in a teal jacket, dissolving into the twilight. I hope I'm wrong, her journal had said. But in Willow Creek, the truth was never black or white. It was the color of rust, of dried blood, of shadows that clung to the trees long after the sun had set. The arrest of Dr. Richard Hayes should have brought closure. Instead, it tore open old wounds, exposing rot beneath the surface of Willow Creek's quiet veneer. Act 5 begins not with a verdict, but with silence, the kind that settles over a town when the cameras leave and the world moves on. Emily Carter's face still smiles from faded posters in shop windows, but her name is now a footnote in true crime forums, eclipsed by fresher tragedies. For the Carters, though, the nightmare persists. Diane spends her days scrubbing the kitchen floor raw, as if cleanliness could erase the stain of loss. David, hollowed out by guilt and whiskey, wanders the woods at dusk, calling Emily's name into the shadows. I'm sorry, he slurs to the trees. I'm so damn sorry. Hayes' trial becomes a spectacle. Prosecutors paint him as a manipulative narcissist willing to destroy a student to protect his reputation. The video of Emily at the oak tree plays on a loop in the courtroom, her voice cracking as she digs for answers she'll never find. Hayes' defense counters with a masterful narrative. Emily was unstable, obsessed with conspiracies, and her death was a tragic accident exacerbated by her own recklessness. She ran into those woods chasing ghosts, Hayes declares on the stand, his tone dripping with faux sympathy. I tried to save her from herself. The jury deliberates for 8 days. When the foreman finally rises, Diane clutches her husband's hand, her knuckles white. Guilty of obstruction of justice and conspiracy to intimidate. The courtroom erupts. Hayes receives 5 years, a slap on the wrist, critics say, while Dex, the hired stalker, serves 3. As Hayes is led away, he locks eyes with Diane and mouths, she's still out there. The Carters cling to those words like a lifeline. They hire a private investigator, a grizzled ex-cop named Frank Voss, who specializes in cold cases. Voss is a man of few words and fewer illusions. "I don't do miracles," he warns them, "but I'll listen to the woods." He starts by retracing Emily's last steps, combing the oak tree site with ground-penetrating radar. The machine pings weakly near a cluster of rocks. Digging reveals a rusted locket, a birthday gift from Emily's grandmother. Its chain snapped, the photo inside reduced to a waterlogged blur. Voss's breakthrough comes from an unlikely source, a teenage TikToker named Alyssa who stumbles upon Emily's case while researching local legends. Using geotag photos from hikers, Alyssa notices a pattern. Every October 12th, a red truck appears near Willow Creek. It's probably a coincidence, she admits in her video. But what if it's not? The clip goes viral, forcing police to reopen the case. This time, they find the truck abandoned in a junkyard, its VIN number scratched off. But beneath the passenger seat, a forensic team discovers a single strand of auburn hair. The hair belongs to Emily. Suddenly, the narrative shifts. Hayes' stalker story frays at the edges. If Dex was merely hired to scare Emily, why was her hair in the truck? Why did Hayes lie about the depth of their conflict? Voss uncovers emails between Hayes and university trustee discussing land acquisition delays and a problematic student. One line jumps out. Handle the Carter situation discreetly. Budget approval hinges. Confronted with the evidence, Hayes' smug facade crumbles. In a jailhouse interview, he confesses to a darker truth. Emily had discovered illegal toxic dumping on the university's newly acquired land. "She threatened to expose us," Hayes admits, staring at his cuffed hands. The trustees panicked. They wanted her quieted permanently. But Hayes insists he never intended murder. Dex was supposed to scare her into dropping the research, but he went rogue. The night she disappeared, he called me, screaming that she'd figured it out. Next thing I knew, she was gone. Voss tracks Dex to a halfway house in Nevada. Now a gaunt shell of his former self, Dex chain smokes through the interrogation. "Yeah, I followed her to the oak tree," he rasps. "She had a folder full of documents. Soil samples, emails, the works. Tried to grab it, but she fought back. Then she ran." Dex claims Emily vanished into the trees, and he fled, fearing repercussions. "I didn't lay a finger on her. Swear to God." But Voss doesn't believe in gods or oaths. He follows a hunch to an abandoned mine, shaft marked on Emily's trail map. The shaft, sealed since the 1980s, has a fresh crack in its concrete cap, wide enough for a body. A search team rappels into the darkness. 20 feet down, a beam of light catches something teal. Emily's jacket, snagged on a rusted beam. Below it, partially buried in sludge, lies a skeletal hand clutching a folder. The documents inside are illegible, but a USB drive survives, its contents revealing a decade of environmental crimes and payoffs. Emily's remains are identified by dental records. The medical examiner rules her death an accident, a fall compounded by hypothermia. But Diane knows better. They killed her, she tells reporters, holding up the folder. Not with knives or guns, but with greed. And every one of them is going to pay. The university settles a wrongful death lawsuit for $12 million. Trustees resign in disgrace. Hayes dies of a heart attack in prison 6 months later. Dex overdoses in a Las Vegas motel. And the red truck? It's crushed into a cube of scrap metal, its secrets compacted into oblivion. In the final scenes, Willow Creek tries to heal. The woods, once Emily's sanctuary, are now dotted with no trespassing signs. The oak tree is cut down, its stump carved into a memorial bench. Diane sits there every Sunday, tracing her daughter's name in the wood. One autumn afternoon, a stranger approaches her, a woman in her 20s with auburn hair and Emily's smile. "I'm sorry about your daughter," she says, handing Diane a folded note. Inside are coordinates and a message. The truth doesn't stay buried. The coordinates lead to a remote stretch of riverbank. There, half submerged in silt, is a camera, Emily's camera. The last photo on the roll shows her standing in a clearing, alive but terrified, pointing at something off-screen. Zooming in, Voss spots a figure in the shadows. A man in a university hoodie, his face obscured but his wrist visible. On it, a tattoo, a snake coiled around a cross. The image makes headlines, but the man is never identified. Some claim it's Hayes, others swear it's Dex. Online sleuths enhance the pixels, searching for answers, but the truth remains just out of reach. The act closes with Diane alone in Emily's bedroom, sunlight filtering through dusty curtains. She opens her daughter's journal to the last entry, its words now etched into her soul. I hope I'm wrong. Outside, the wind stirs the trees, carrying whispers of a girl who dared to dig too deep, and a town that let the earth swallow her. Emily Carter's story is one of countless unanswered questions. But it's also a reminder, every disappearance leaves ripples. Every cold case holds a truth waiting to be found. Cut to a close-up of Emily's journal, open to her final entry. The camera zooms in on the words, I hope I'm wrong, as the narrator continues. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share your theories in the comments. Tag someone who needs to hear this. And if you have even the smallest clue about Emily's case, or any unsolved mystery, speak up. Silence only protects the guilty.